In the world of mainstream superhero comics, there are a few series as special as Denny O'Neill's and Dennis Cowan's The Question. Putting philosophical introspection at the forefront, they use their characters and setting to explore themes normally untouched by mainstream comics. Urban decay, the blurred definition of sanity, the nature of humanity itself, identity, the abuse of privilege, and so much more. Each issue had a point to get across, not in a preachy manner, but simply something to get the reader thinking. It was not a comic series about if the hero would catch the villain and save the day. It was a series that wanted to engage the reader on an intellectual level while still managing to have a gripping story. I want to take a look at issue 5 entitled Cityscape and dive into the thematic meanings and social commentary. In the preceding 4 issues, Vic Sage took down the villainous Reverend Hatch. Hatch was responsible for the growing urban decay and corruption spreading like a disease throughout Hub City. Mayor Wesley Furman is ineffectual and an idiot, so Hatch was the power behind the throne. So in a classic superhero fashion, the day is saved and the people rejoice, right? No. One person cannot change a problem that is systematic to society, nor does one man cause the problems to begin with. The government of Hub City is now in shambles. There's looting and rioting on the streets, and mundane things like buses, policemen, and taxis refuse to operate in the hysteria. Vic, in an effort to battle corruption and be the hero, has caused even more problems. Problems that O'Neill and Cowan will painstakingly show us throughout issue 5. The Question issue 5 is a series of intertwining vignettes that show the aftermath of the previous issue's events. Bernie and Francine are trapped in their office building because of the riots. Myra frets over her decision to kill Reverend Hatch. Vic attempts to clean up the mess he believes he caused. Izzy O'Toole finally breaks away from the cycle he has been living in. Wesley deflects his shortcomings as mayor, and Maud calmly waits for a bus that will never come. Each one of these characters' stories demonstrate the problems that lie at the heart of Hub City, the refusal to accept responsibility for one's own actions, passing the buck. Bernie takes advantage of Francine's vulnerability and rapes her. Afterwards, he attempts to justify his horrible actions by claiming that he is a human in need of affection. His attempts to deflect his actions with his own twisted logic. Perhaps his flimsy reasoning is why he throws himself off the roof of the office building, or perhaps not. Regardless, what matters is that he changed his mind. But he was too late for the old fool. His transgressions have boiled up to the surface and killed him. His wife will wonder what became of her husband and never know. The city takes men like Bernie in and enables them, feeding their worst impulses because at the end of the day it wasn't them that did it. Or so they tell themselves. Izzy O'Toole is a cop, perhaps the most corrupt cop on the force, but that means little to him. He lived in a city that had a system, a corrupt and vile system, but a system nonetheless. So he did his part, followed the rules that was laid out before him, never really thinking for himself. He was sleepwalking through life, doing as others did unto him. He finally wakes up when he stumbles upon the still fresh corpse of Bernie being looted on the street. In this one moment, Izzy has nothing to justify their actions, no rules to hide behind. The whole of Hub City has gone, as Dashiell Hammett would put it, blood simple. They're letting their animalistic side out, indulging in their baser instincts because the rules are gone. It gives them the excuse. Izzy realizes for the first time that the rules should be changed, that nothing can justify their actions. Mayor Wesley Furman is a drunk, and whose only concern previously was blackmailing the news reporter he found attractive, Myra, into marrying him. Strictly speaking, it was Hatch who did everything for him. Wesley Furman is many things, a scumbag and an idiot is among them. He too doesn't take responsibility for his own actions. He runs the city, but passed off those duties to Hatch. With the Reverend gone, people want answers to why the city is tearing itself apart. In a very public speech, he passes the buck to the commies. He pulls a move out of every politician's book. Blame the other side. It doesn't matter that all of this happened because he was so incompetent that an insane Reverend was able to manipulate him. What matters is that he is blameless, or at least he has the power and privilege necessary to make himself blameless. Myra waits out the problems of the city in her apartment, trying to take her mind off of things with cake. If she can't see the problems, then there isn't one, right? But there is a truth in silence, and Myra used to be a reporter. She understands that you can't hide from the truth. In her thoughts, she plays mental gymnastics with herself in order to justify her actions. She was defending her child, Jackie, from the monstrous Reverend Hatch. He deserved to die, he was insane. She was acting on impulse, she didn't think it through. For each of her justifications, she comes back with a rebuttal. The Question had to defuse the situation. You can't be a judge, jury, and executioner, and that if she had no idea what she was doing, then she was just as crazy as Hatch was. She can't pass the buck anymore and must face the reality that by taking a life, she is no better than the horrible man she killed. Vic is the only one that starts out believing he was at fault from the start. He can't pass the buck. He is to blame. But as Aristotle Roeder points out to him, the problems with Hub City existed long before he came about and will continue to plague the city. Punching the problems away is not going to solve anything. All we are witnessing is the natural course of events of refusing to accept the truth. Everyone is at fault and refuses to admit it. As Vic says, "Oh, it's not my fault that the mayor's mansion burned. I was wrong about that. But I do share the guilt for allowing the city to become the nightmare that it is. The nightmare it has been for years. I'm a journalist by profession. A journalist's task is to tell the truth, tell it long and loud and shrill until people do something about what's wrong." What is wrong with the city is represented by the old lady known as Maud. She will sit at that damn bus stop until she freezes to death. Why? Because that is what she has always done. Just like Izzy, she is sleepwalking through life. She doesn't change and doesn't care. She even refuses the help Vic offers her. She, just like the whole damn city, is stubborn and refuses to change. She isn't at fault for anything after all. She's just living her life and what happens to others doesn't affect her. This all ties back to the opening pages of the question issue 5. In 1818, we see Gaston Hubert declare the foundation of Hub City. He died at that very moment, killed by his own men. But the official story says that the Indians killed him, because his killers didn't want to accept responsibility. They just passed the blame to someone else. A statue of Gaston lies at the center of Hub City, a literal monument built on the backs of liars and cheaters, a symbol of an unchanging world. The citizens of Hub City have always avoided responsibility, and will continue to do so even long after the city has crumbled into dust. In one single issue, Denny O'Neil and Dennis Cowan managed to say more about the sad nature of humanity than many other mainstream superhero comics of its time. Throughout its 36-issue run, questions are raised and answers are given. Sometimes the answers are unsettling, sometimes they are poignant, and other times they are ambiguous. What's important is that you walked away from each issue asking the right questions. The truth, as they say, can set you free.